This call is now being recorded. This call is now being transcribed.
Okay, everybody, we're just going to go over the Ingage process for the different roofing and siding divisions. Pretty straightforward. It's just a little something to sit down with your customer after you've gotten to the table. Gives them something to look at, something to keep them involved. Just remember with this presentation, it's not a holy Bible of going through this. It's just gives you some good stories, some good ways to navigate. So you're going to see along the bottom on the Ingage tabs that say welcome, industry, why us, cost versus value, products and services, gallery, installation, review. Those are just the different tabs that you're going to want to swipe through. You'll notice the first one is welcome, opens up on this little video here. I always just leave this sitting in the background. The first tab I go to is actually not the industry. I typically go to why us first. So on the iPad, you can just click why us. So when you're going through with the customer, we're the Tri-State's premier roofing and siding company, over 50 years industry experience. Really, this is going to be based on your market. I believe Maryland has 30 years on theirs. Just different ways to lay the story out. When you swipe over, you'll notice that the Why Us has a couple of different pages. They're all like that. So don't immediately just go to the cost versus value or products or services. Make sure you're swiping through. So this is now a good time to lay the story. Hey, we're family owned and operated, been in your area for 30 years, approved through the Better Business Bureau, master elite contractor through roofing and siding. How far you want to go into this is going to be dependent upon where really you are at with the presentation. I try to give this here. I don't want to be overselling while I'm doing my inspection outside. This is where you start getting into the nuts and bolts of who we are and why we do what we do. I always make sure we show our customers the Pennsylvania state license, proof of insurance. Make sure, like I said, you have stories around this. You're asking customers questions. Have you ever done business with a contractor before? What was that experience like? Now, I always tell people, look, the biggest burden on our business as roofers, truthfully, is liability insurance. It's incredibly expensive to insure roofers because injuries and things like that, they're not usually twisted ankles, right? They're usually a little bit bigger than that. This is where you start to explain, hey, the three levels of contractors, right? You got your chuck in a truck, you've got your huge private equity guys, and you've got your family companies in the middle. Your chuck in a truck guys can't really afford to carry this burden of business, to carry this cost. This is where you're really trying to differentiate yourself and build that story. And remember, with your customers, like I said, always be asking questions, always be trying to keep them involved, because as you're going through this process, you don't want to be boring, right? You want to give them as much as you can to keep them engaged, for lack of a better term, right? So, showing these companies, the counties that we serve, whether or not you want to go through this, to be honest, I don't always, because I want the customer to feel like we're very, very local, that we didn't drive, 2 hours to get to them. And then your online reviews. When you are going through the Ingage process, you'll see the Facebook, Google, Home Advisor. When you're actually looking, if you look closely at the Facebook logo, if you look closely at the Google logo, you're going to see it almost looks like a pulsing circle. That's an indication that you can click on that. You're going to want to give it a good click so that your reviews will populate. Let the customers read through these. Let them get a pretty good idea on what we're about and set the stage in that way. Now, to me, that is incredibly important. Most of the time when you're asking a customer about their process, right, we know we've already passed the sniff test. So a lot of times your customers already seen something on us online. Just give them a little bit more to look at, a little bit more to see. remind them of why exactly we're out there. Now, our mission tab, for the most part, your customer should, at this point, kind of really know these things about us. You know, biggest thing we're trying to drive home here is that we're just quality people doing quality work. This tab, I would not spend more than a couple of seconds going on over this. This is just more reinforcing what they should already know based on how you approached outside, based on the professionalism of how you look. These are the things that, you know, if you get to this point and your customer doesn't already know this about you, we missed the step somewhere before we ever even got here. Now, incredibly important page in the Ingage under the Why Us tab is the video testimonials. What I love about the video testimonials is we got people from all walks of life. We've got many different situations, insurance, siding over stucco, roofing. You get a really good indication on what we're doing here. So as you're walking through, hey, you know, 5-star reviews, this is who we are, this is what other customers have said to say about us. That's kind of your pathway through. As you're going through this, show them the video. Try to familiarize yourself with the video so you know which one you want to use. And then these little learn more boxes under each video. I love these because when you click on them, it's going to let you know what that project entailed. This is huge for price conditioning. When you get to this, you really just want to sit on here. Don't acknowledge that number at the bottom at all. You don't have to. Believe me, the customer sees it. The customer knows it's there. Just, yeah, this was a church in Haverford. We did partial stucco removal, fairing strips back over. We did Main Street D4. You know, you could see from this video that the customer is extraordinarily pleased with what and how we did it. You know, these are the experiences that we're trying to leave customers such as yourself with. This is what it's all about for us, doing the right job, doing it properly, leaving the customer satisfied. Once you go through this, now you're going to go back to the industry tab at the bottom, that first tab past welcome, because now is where it fits best, in my opinion. Mr. and Mrs. Customer, you may not be aware, but the home improvement industry as a whole operates usually just under 11 million complaints a year. And the reason for that is, you know, like I talked about, you have 3 levels of contractors and you're not necessarily safe. You have these chuck in a truck kind of guys that we always talk about. You know, they show up with spackle on the back of the F-150. It's just 2 brothers picking up a couple of guys from Home Depot. You know, they don't have insurance. They maybe aren't licensed even to do this work in your state. And who knows what they're doing to your house. And then you have the super topside guys where you may be safer ultimately investing your money with them because at least if they mess something up, they can fix it. But you're going to pay way more than you have to for a project like this. The reason that we have these 10.7 million complaints as an industry isn't because of companies like mine. It's because of all the riffraff that's out there. Then you're going to want to hit the don't end up with this. And you're going to focus in on these images. Hey, it's not just the quality of the work. It's not just the material. Sometimes it's the very people doing the work are just, you know, not leaving you in a safe place, not leaving your home in a safe place. Sometimes it is the quality of the work, you know, stuff not being secured correctly, material coming off far sooner than it should. You know, sometimes it's using the wrong materials because ultimately, you know, the contractor either A, doesn't know what they're doing, or B, doesn't care. And just really make sure that your customer is seeing these images, that they're focused in, that they're interacting, and ask them, how comfortable would you feel knowing that you know, no matter how much money it may be, that you spent your hard-earned money on a project and you end up getting siding that looks like this? And then ask them, what are your options after that gets done? You either A, live with it and know that you wasted your money for something you didn't want, or B, you're going back and you're now paying somebody twice to fix it. This is hugely important. This is just hammering home the point as to why we are the right decision for them. Listen, we've got the best workmanship and warranties in the industry. We carry top tier liability insurance. We actually care about your house. And point I always drive home here is, look, we're ready to support you. You're going to get my personal number when this project moves forward. So that way you're never without somebody. You're never going to think to yourself, man, I wish I could have gotten a hold of someone. You will be able to get a hold of me. Once you're through the industry portion, you can start, take a breath, take a pause, ask the customer some questions. Hey, what does your process look like? If, this project needs to be done. Clearly we agree on that, right? And we know it's not going to be any cheaper tomorrow than it is today, because unfortunately that's just not the way of the world. So what does your process look like for getting this done? And the customer will tell you, oh, I need it done ASAP, or they'll say, hey, I'm getting other estimates. That will lead you into your cost versus value, which is this tab next to the Why Us at the bottom here. Cost versus value is incredibly important in the Ingage, because this is creates urgency, and B, price conditions. Now, you've already done a little bit of price conditioning with the video testimonials that we went over, but the cost versus value report, the way I always explain it to customers is, hey, have you ever heard of the Kelley Blue Book? The customer will tell you yes or no, and you just explain the Kelley Blue Book was a publication that was created to make sure that if you're buying or selling a car, you're not getting ripped off. You're going to get fair market value if you're selling, and you're not going to overpay if you're buying. And the cost versus value report is basically just that for home improvement. And then I always bring it back to something I did. I actually found this report when I was doing my own kitchen. I found it when I was, remodeling my bathroom, because as I got more and more estimates, I realized that there's such a large range, and I didn't know who was right. So what I did was I tried to find something that gave me an indication as to what should I expect to pay for this. So if it's a roofing job, you're going to hit roofing replacement, and you're going to let the customer read. You don't read this to them, you let the customer read. And then you say, look, the cost has substantially increased over the last 5 years. And then ask the customer, what have you experienced over the last 5 years? Have you noticed this trend? Customers usually say COVID. They say, oh, yeah, can you eat? Have you even been to the grocery store lately? That's where they're getting at with this. But you let them absorb this, and then you actually click the cost versus value report, and you show them, hey, it's not just roofs, guys. It's everything. And you start to walk them through. Now, what I really like to do is, instead of even opening this chart, I go back to roofing replacement. And if you look at the bottom right-hand corner, see that cost versus value? That pulsing circle is back. If you click on that pulsing circle, it's going to actually open the real web page. And then what you can do is you can whittle this down to specific areas and let the customer look. The reason I prefer to do this is because this is showing that it's not something we just made up to put here. It's an actual web page by a company that is not affiliated with us in any way. It adds legitimacy to the story that you're telling. And then you'll usually get some type of response from the customer. Hey, I didn't know. Wow, that's much higher than I was expecting. Or, my sister just had a roof done for such and such. They'll give you those things. You don't have to acknowledge that right then and there. That is entirely up to you how you want to tackle what exactly they're saying. But listen to it, acknowledge it in however which way you choose, even if that's technically not acknowledging it, not attacking it head on right then and there. Just keep it in your back pocket. Then you're going to get into products and services and just say, hey, look, if you're doing a window or a door or gutter lead, these pages are fantastic. For roofing and siding, typically I gloss over these because you have actual material samples in your hand. To me, those are more impactful than going over in the slides themselves. But just to let you kind of see, you click roofing. We offer residential roofing service that include repair, replacement, installation. We only use high quality materials and techniques to ensure that your roof will withstand the test of time. Like I said, I don't typically go over these because the booklets that you have in your bag are far more impactful. But this is what they look like. Now what I will do is I will go over to the gallery, and whatever the project is, say it's roofing, I'm going to open that up. I'm going to hand the iPad to the customer, and I'm going to say, hey, can you swipe through these pictures for a minute while I get my my bag out? There's a couple things I want to show you. While the customer is looking through this is where you get your roof in a bag out. This is so there's no dead time in what you're doing. You're not giving them a chance to really look at their phone and to start zoning out. You're keeping them actively part of this while you're rifling through your bag. And as they go through the pictures, pull it out of your bag. Now you're going to move over to installation. Say it's still a roofing project. You're going to open the roofing page up and it's going to give you these. This is where I have the roof in a bag out, and I kind of just leave this in the background. This is sitting there the whole time. Hey, we're going to clear the roof. We're going to remove your existing shingles. We're going to make sure that the mess stays as isolated as possible. We're going to run through 35-pound magnets, make sure all the debris is picked up, make sure you're not worried about your pets, your car tires, anything like that. We're going to inspect the roofing deck, so plywood, OSB, whatever it may be. We're going to make sure it's in good shape. If it's not, we're going to repair damage as needed because we're never going to go over top of something that we shouldn't. Then, as you get into the install section, this is where you open the roof in a bag and you start to go through that. We're going to fit the shingles around pipes, vents, and other features, and then complete the cleanup at the end of the job. This is once again where I hammer home the point that I am their point of contact. I say, look, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, what I want to hammer home about the cleanup is that if you're still finding nails a day or two after the job, I want you to call me directly. I'll personally come out with the magnet and do a final walkthrough with you. Just that extra little bit of holding their hand through the process makes you look like you're not just there to help them sign paperwork today. You're there with them through the project. Gives them that little bit of peace of mind that, hey, oh yeah, by the way, once this guy leaves, he's not leaving me entirely. Once I'm through the actual process, I go over a review. I don't typically do the 2 decisions you can't afford because I've already established with the customer that they can't do nothing. And I've already talked to them about the downsides of doing business with the wrong company. I go right into this last page. So we're A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau. I'm sure that's important to you, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Locally owned and operated, over 50 years of experience, thousands of customers happily served throughout our area, outstanding reviews, the best insurance policy that you can get for roofing, and warranties that are second to none. Swipe down, check all those boxes for them. Now is where I will leave this up in the background and I will get into the presenting the actual 3 options for the customer. Hey, this is your TAM code, this is your HTZ, this is your UHTZ. At this point, you're pretty much done with the Engage. You can now wrap it up. Once you have this down and your stories are flowing naturally and your progression is natural, this should only take you 10, 15 minutes. You do not have to live on this thing, and you do not want to oversell it at any point. This is just, hey, this is who we are. This is what we do. Here's some pretty pictures. Here's how the money makes sense. Let's get into presenting your options in the close. Now, what I will do, and the reason I leave the Engage up as much as possible, is because when you get to objections about the cost, you can always go back to the cost versus value. You can always open this back up. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, you see that the average cost for a 30 square roof in our area is $32,000, which means if I were to take that $32,000 and I'm going to divide it by the 30 squares, you should expect to spend about $1,073 per square on the average roof in this area. Now, if I'm to multiply that by the 20 squares that your roof is, you should expect your roof to cost no less than $21,445. This is how you can kind of build the idea that if they already have an estimate that's 14,000, you can kind of start to delegitimize that. If this is the average, how are they coming in so much under the average? What would you expect for a job that was less than half of the average price? These are the ways that you can use the Ingage past just the initial presentation to make it make sense to the customer. And then once it makes sense, then you just got to make it easy to buy. And as long as you're hitting those points and hammering home the financing and making it easy to buy, you're going to win those customers. You're going to win everyone that you can. So that is really how I use the Ingage. If you find that you have a more comfortable way of going through it, a way that's a little less wordy, a way that makes more sense to you, like I said, this is not the Bible of doing this. This is just a pretty good jumping off point that you can use just to get yourself comfortable with it. Once you're comfortable with it, then you can start maneuvering it in a way that you feel like suits your selling style best. But if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to me directly. I'm Derek Hocker out of the Munns unit. I would be more than happy to help anybody out with this.